Hi guys, Chenmai here. Welcome to Upskillian. So this particular Power BI interview question is a very important question, and generally you will see this being asked by interviewers. Okay, so let's discuss about the practical concepts of this, and then we'll come to the theoretical part. So let's head over to my laptop to discuss the practical one. Okay guys, so as you can see, I'm in the Power Query section of Power BI, right? Now here we will be discussing about what's the difference between duplicate query and reference query. Okay, the first thing is from where can we avail this option, right? For that you have to come to the left side, which is basically your queries pane, right? Here we see different queries. Like I have already said, in Power Query the tables are named as query. Don't get confused this with SQL query or some other query. Wherever the term query is used in Power Query, it's basically a table. So orders table can be called as orders query and vice versa. Now let's see where we can create a duplicate query and reference query. So for that you have to right click here. So when you right click, you see two options, right? One is duplicate, the other is reference. Let me click on duplicate, right? And let me rename this particular query as orders duplicate. Okay. Similarly, let me create a reference query also. I'll again right click here and click on reference query and rename this to orders reference. Correct. So now that we have two queries, duplicate and reference, first difference that you observe here is observe the applied steps area. In reference it says source, whereas in duplicate there are some steps here. So what does that mean, guys? Duplicate query is an independent query. It's not dependent on the parent table, which is the orders table, whereas reference query is linked to the parent table, that is the orders table, right? That can be known from the applied steps area. Correct. Now let's see other differences. Okay, so if you do some transformations in the parent table, it will not be affecting the duplicate query, whereas it will affect the reference query, right? So if I go here and rename this row ID or SNO, serial number, to just serial number, I have done some transformation here, right? How do I confirm that? Towards the right side, if you see, we have something called as renamed columns. Now if you go to the duplicate query, there is no such transformation here. But if you go to reference, you can see that the transformation that was done in the parent query is now reflecting here, which means any transformation that you do in the parent query is reflected in the reference query because it is linked, but not in duplicate. Got it? Now let's see a practical use case where we use duplicate query and reference query. So remember guys, whenever you have to do transformations independent of the parent table, you have to go for duplicate query. But remember that whenever you go for a duplicate query, you are increasing the size of the data set. For what does that mean? Let's assume that orders table is of 1 MB. So if you are creating a duplicate query, you are adding another 1 MB to your data set, which will basically impact the performance of the report, right? But the reference query doesn't increase the size of the data set. It just simply refers or links to the parent query. Duplicate query is not good from report optimization perspective, but it gives you an independence of using a query without dependent on the parent one. So that is a trade-off that you need to decide whether to go for a duplicate or reference, whether you want to sacrifice the performance of the report or you want independence, right? So guys, we saw the difference between the duplicate query and reference query in practical aspects, right? So this is the same thing which I have written here in the theoretical part, and I'll again iterate that for you, that duplicate query is an independent query, whereas reference query is linked to the parent table or the parent query. Now the second point here is any transformation that you do in the parent table doesn't get translated down to the duplicate query. Whereas in the reference query, we can see that the same thing gets translated down. Now what are the use cases for duplicate query? Basically, if you intend to apply different transformations to the new query without affecting the original one, you have to go for a duplicate query. Whereas in reference query, if you want to build an existing query and do some additional transformations, then you can go for reference. So in reference, what happens? It links to the parent query, but on top of that you can do some transformations. But if you delete the parent query or if you do some changes there, it will affect the reference query. So that's the problem. The independence is a problem here. Remember two words. One is independence, the other is performance. Now in duplicate query, because of the increase in size of the data set, it might affect the performance of the report, whereas in reference query, it doesn't affect the performance of the report. Right guys? So now I believe that you have clearly understood the difference between direct query and reference query, and you can basically convince the interviewer that you know these concepts practically also. Right? Thank you all.
Hey guys, I hope you loved this video. If yes, please like this video, subscribe to Upskillian, and if you want more such videos, please put it in the comment section. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.